Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. So I posted this on Instagram, and if you haven't already, please follow me on Instagram or Facebook, TikTok. But I posted this quote by Elder Bruce R. McConkie. It's from his book called Mormon Doctrine. It's on page 546, and it has to do with the 144,000. And people were asking, how does one qualify to become one of the 144,000? Is that something that you can do? Is that something that we should try and do? And let me just first say, I don't believe so. I'm going to explain why. It's just like how you don't try and become bishop or Relief Society president or the prophet. That's not how this church works. But I'm going to show you all the different things that I know or that I've researched about the 144,000, who they are and what we know about them, and how it seems that that selection process has already started all the way back in the days of Joseph Smith. Okay, so here's the quote that I put. These 144,000 are God's, as the name on their foreheads specifies. Their callings and elections have been made sure. They are exalted personages. Or in other words, they're resurrected. They're not in mortality anymore. They are now resurrected. They are redeemed from among men, and in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. They have attained perfection. Whom shall have membership in the church of the firstborn, and therefore be exalted beings. Okay, so I have more to share. I have this spreadsheet called Quotes, Common Misconceptions. You can access my spreadsheet anytime, or all my spreadsheets. The link is in the description box of each video. So we are looking at row 4. The topic is 144,000, and the misconception is we haven't seen the 144,000 yet. So a lot of times people will say, well, we know that we're not close to the second coming because we haven't seen the selection of the 144,000 who are supposed to go on these kind of like spectacular super missions. You know, everybody, the entire church is supposed to be in the New Jerusalem in Jackson County, and the whole world is going to be full of war and radiation from the nuclear bombs. And so only the 144,000 are going to be able to withstand the toxicity of planet Earth and go to the dangerous areas and be missionaries, which I don't believe any of those things. The whole thing about the entire church going to the New Jerusalem, that's a whole entire other topic. See my playlist called New Jerusalem, or just see what I have here on the spreadsheet. The entire church is not going to Jackson County. But anyway, this is the first thing that I have on here. This is from Joseph Smith. You can find this on josephsmithpapers.org. This is Minutes in Discourse, 2nd of May, 1835, as reported by William E. McClellan, page 7. So he's talking about the priesthood office of 70. Okay, pay attention to this because this might be a clue as to who are the 144,000. Joseph Smith said, if the first 70 are all employed and there is a call for more laborers in the vineyard, it will be the duty of the 7 presidents of the first 70 to call and ordain other 70 and send them forth to labor until, if need be, they set apart 7 times 70, and even until there are 144,000, thus set apart to the ministry. So Joseph Smith kind of sets that as like the limit. Now I don't know if he was being that was a strict limit, but he said, okay, keep calling 70 until we get to 144,000, if there's a need for that many. All right, continuing. The 70 are not to attend the conferences of the 12 unless they are called upon or requested to do so by the 12. So that may be a hint as to who the 70 are. I would assume that it would include them as well as the prophets and apostles, or just generally speaking, all the general authorities of the church. I don't know. And I'm okay with not knowing for sure. The next one is also from Joseph Smith. This is josephsmithpapers.org, and this is Manuscript for History of the Church, Volume E1. So that's all I need to say about that. You can look that up if you want. The world is reserved unto burning in the last days. He shall send Elijah the prophet, and he shall reveal the covenants of the fathers in relation to the children, and the covenants of the children in relation to the fathers. 4 destroying angels, holding power over the 4 quarters of the earth, until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads, which signifies sealing the blessing upon their heads, meaning the everlasting covenant, thereby making their calling and election sure. So that's what Elder Bruce R. McConkie was talking about, having their calling and election made sure. And then continuing, when a seal is put upon the father and mother, it secures their posterity, so they cannot be lost, but will be saved by virtue of the covenant of their father and mother. Okay, so at this point, there's a couple other things that we need to look at. First, this thing about the father and mother and their children that cannot be lost. Elder David A. Bednar wrote an article in, let's see, what is this? This is the Liahona, the March 2014 Liahona, Faithful Parents and Wayward Children. I just want to make note of this really quick. If you need to, pause the video and you can read this. I'm not going to read it. But some people think that, well, as long as you're sealed and living righteously, your children will not be lost by virtue of being sealed together. And that's not true. Elder Bednar, he explains it right here. So just pause and read it. Okay. Secondly, back to the 144,000, Joseph Smith was referring to Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 8. So you remember that he talked about 4 angels. So it says, and after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I saw another angel, so a 5th angel, ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Okay, so don't bring judgments upon the earth, the judgments that you're assigned to bring to the earth, until we have sorted through and we've, selected the 144,000, until they're selected, sealed in their foreheads. And it goes through, and then it says, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed in 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben, and then goes through all the tribes except for Dan. Okay, that's going to come into play in just a minute here, so please remember that scripture that we just read. Okay, the next thing that I have is also Joseph Smith. This is also in History of the Church, volume E1. You can find it in the Joseph Smith Papers project. The 4th of February, 1844, Sunday the 4th. I attended prayer meeting with the quorum in the assembly room and made some remarks respecting the 144,000 mentioned by John the Revelator, showing that the selection of persons to form that number had already commenced. Okay? So, at the time that Joseph Smith was alive, and this would have been the Nauvoo period, the selection of the 144,000 had already commenced. So supposing that those people that were selected were righteous, received their, callings and elections, and they were made sure, and they are now passed away and they could be resurrected. If they aren't, then they probably will shortly be resurrected. Then there you go. Here are some of the people, if not all of them, that he's referring to. Let's continue on. Okay, so this is President Wilford Woodruff. So at this time, he's president of the church. You can find this in the Young Women's Journal, August 1894, pages 512 to 513. The article is The Temple Workers' Excursion. So note the date. It's 1894, the year before the Salt Lake Temple was dedicated. Okay? And this was a temple workers' excursion, or kind of like an outing that they had where they had like, it seems like they had like picnics and they went on a train and went on a trip. It was just like a temple workers excursion, just like it says. And President Wilford Woodruff was with them. And during one of the like devotionals or firesides, this is what he said. God has held the angels of destruction for many years. He's referring to the 4 angels. It talks about this in the Institute Student Manual, plus I have a few quotes from Joseph Fielding Smith. So that's what he's referring to. God has held the angels of destruction for many years, lest they should reap down the wheat with the tares. But I want to tell you now that those angels have left the portals of heaven. Now keep in mind, in Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 4, it says that those angels should not commence their work until the 144,000 have been sealed in their foreheads. Okay, so this is 1894. Let me continue. And they stand over this people and this nation now, and are hovering over the earth, waiting to pour out the judgments. And from this very day, they shall be poured out. Calamities and troubles are increasing in the earth, and there is a meaning to these things. Remember this and reflect upon these matters. If you do your duty, and I do my duty, we'll have the protection, and shall pass through the afflictions in peace and in safety. And again, there's members of the church who would have you believe otherwise, that, well, yes, if you're righteous, but I mean, you're still going to have to go through tribulation, and it's going to be, no, I mean, you might, but let's focus on the fact the Lord is going to protect his covenant people at large. Okay, the next one, you can find this on scholarsarchive.byu. This is a paper written by Darrell Wesley Judd called Zadok Knapp Judd, Soldier, Colonizer, Missionary to the Lamanites. Okay, he says, difficult as it was for Zadok's mother, so this was an early member of the church, to provide food for her family, she never forgot about their spiritual welfare. To help promote their religious growth, she took Zadok and the other boys to the patriarch, Joseph Smith Sr., and each received a blessing. Because of their poor financial condition, they did not pay for the blessing to be recorded, and the boys never received copies of them. It was an important experience for them, however, and 12-year-old Zadok remembered the occasion and some of the promises throughout his life. He said, "He told me my name was recorded in the Lamb's Book of Life, and angels had charge to watch over me continually, and that I was one of the 144,000 that should stand as saviors upon Mount Zion in the latter days." So it would seem that Zadok Knapp Judd is one of the 144,000, and he has now passed away. And so he may already be a resurrected being. If he's not, he should be resurrected pretty soon, I would imagine. Okay, now we're going to look at what Joseph Fielding Smith said. At this time, he was in the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is the April 1946 General Conference. Conference report, pages 154 to 159. I heard President Wilford Woodruff in this stand, this same place where I stand, bear witness as he had done in other places in 1893, the year that the Salt Lake Temple was dedicated, and up to the time of his death, that the angels who had been waiting to go forth to reap down the earth had now been sent upon that mission, and they were in the earth. Therefore, he said, we may look for calamities, for destruction, for plague, and bloodshed. And there definitely has been. Okay, this is another one. This is from Elder Joseph Fielding Smith. Well, he just kind of repeats the same thing. I'm actually going to skip this one, but he points to 1893. And then here's another one where it's a little bit more explicit. This is the Doctrine and Covenants Student Manual, page 191. President Joseph Fielding Smith, who was present with President Woodruff. Who was present when President Woodruff talked about these angels at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple, recorded the following. Quote, "One day, while I was sitting in the presence of my father, President Joseph F. Smith, back about 1908 or 9, somewhere in there, I called attention to these statements of President Woodruff, and I said I would like to go over the records from the time of the dedication of the temple up until now and see what we can find in regard to calamities, destructions, plagues, and he encouraged me to do it, and so I did. So I went over the newspapers and over the magazines and jotted down year by year the destructions, the commotions among men, everything in the nature of a calamity, and to my great astonishment, each year they increased, and they have been increasing ever since I quit making that record. I was greatly astonished by it, and when I called the attention of one of my neighbors to it, he almost got angry at me and said, "Oh, well, we have got better facilities now for discovering these things. I don't believe it." And he is a member of the church too, but seemed to lack faith in these predictions. Just like you and me experience all the time when we try to share our excitement about the second coming, the signs of the times that we're witnessing, there are those that see them and recognize them for what they are, and others that will ridicule you and also get angry at you. It's very unfortunate. But it's interesting because, you know, if you had Excel or Google Sheets back then, I'm sure that he would have used a spreadsheet because that's a great way to track things. And that's what I'm trying to do with my spreadsheets. It's been a while since we've looked at my spreadsheets for, earthquakes and lightning and solar flares and whatever, but I'm doing the best that I can. I'm not perfect. It's a lot of stuff to try and track, but I try and catch all the big things at least. So I don't know when the next time is going to be that I go to one of these spreadsheets, but you can go to them right now if you'd like. They're all titled signs, and then you have like eclipses, earthquakes, hurricanes, Jewish specific signs, and so on. Okay. All right. And then that brings us to the last one that I have. And this is the one that we started out with in the Instagram post. So one other thing to keep in mind. Okay, so Elder Bruce R. McConkie, I think in Mormon doctrine, he talks about them as though it is a literal number, literally 12,000 from each tribe. No, in fact, he says it right here in Mormon doctrine. He says, "These brethren," I better go to this one so you can, if you want, some people like to read along. "These brethren, 12,000 from each of the tribes of Israel, excepting for some unspecified reason, the tribe of Dan, are high priests, ordained unto the holy order of God." Okay. And then he repeats the fact that they're exalted beings. Okay. That they're resurrected. I'll defer to what he said. Although I do know that sometimes prophets and apostles, they could be giving their opinion. I don't play that game where it's like, oh, it's just their opinion. I'll go with it. But I do want to just point out that in the book of Revelation, if you go to the Institute Student Manual, it gives all these examples of when numbers are used, but they're most likely symbolic, or we know that they're symbolic. So, for example, when it talks about the 7 churches, it says these 7 may represent the church as a whole, and that's why the number 7 is being used. The number 7 being symbolic of completeness. So the 7 churches may just be referring to all of the church. The 200,000, so in other words, 200,000 people that would be involved in the Battle of Armageddon. It says here, we do not know whether that number is symbolic or literal. Okay, we just don't know. When it comes to 666, it says the Lord has not revealed the meaning of this symbolic number. One thing I would say about that, though, if we come back to my spreadsheet called Quotes, Common Misconceptions, if you scroll up, I have 666, and the misconception is that it is a financial tracking system that will be imposed on every person when the Antichrist is in power. I don't accept that whole idea of a final Antichrist, but I have a playlist for that, and it's also on this spreadsheet. But in the early church, you have President Woodruff, Elder Orson Pratt, President George A. Smith, President Brigham Young, and another one from Wilford Woodruff. where they use 666 in their discourses, but when they use it, they're referring to the different sects of Christianity, like how you have all these branches of Christianity, and that Satan is the one that brought, and Satan is that Antichrist, by the way, the man of sin. He's the one that took, the remnant of the church after the priesthood, those that held priesthood keys were killed. He took that remnant and essentially had his way with Christianity. And there's a lot of good things that have come from these churches. And I know that there's many good people, but Satan, he was essentially in charge during the Great Apostasy. So anyway, going back to this, and then the last example that I have here is talking about the city of New Jerusalem in Revelation chapter 21. And that's a topic for another time, but if you were to take it literally, then it would be this gigantic cube that is essentially the size of a continent. And that's how some people see it. But it seems that, like it says here, it's representative rather than literal of God's dwelling place. And it reminds us of Solomon's temple, the Holy of Holies, because that was a cube. And so it's most likely, and this is what I believe that it's just simply symbolic. And so when we're talking about the 144,000, I don't personally really think that. I will go with Elder Bruce R. McConkie, but if he's wrong, then I won't be surprised. But I don't need to know for sure because it doesn't really matter. But with everything that we looked at in regards to the 144,000, it seems like that has already taken place and that we should expect to see them whenever the resurrection takes place and when they come to Jerusalem with Christ to save the Jews, and then at the final appearance. Well, and I guess, at Adam and all the appearances, maybe they'll be at all of them. They probably will be. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for this one. Again, please make sure to follow me on Instagram. If you haven't subscribed to me on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure to do that as well. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.